Deep inside Japrag's Park in Heinsberg, Vermont, there's a mystery. Back in 2011, someone walked way out here under the cover of night and installed a mailbox, leaving no explanation aside from that three-letter clue, D-A-D.
After keeping it secret for so many years, I knew that somebody would find out about it and want to share it with others, and I think now is a great time to share it.
Barry Lampke put it there because he has always been a letter writer, and his favorite pen pal was always his father, George.
That was my way to connect with him, and so when he passed away, about a year later, I realized that piece of our relationship was missing. And so that's when I decided to find a way to continue that connection.
Again, until recently, no one knew how it got there, but many have stumbled upon it, peeked inside, and made it their connection too. Strangers now leave blank journals for others to write in, and today there are hundreds of messages to dads gone by. You showed me how kind and gentle a truly strong man is. How challenging it is sometimes to keep you a part of my life when the living are so needy. I often wish I could see you, but I don't miss you because your spirit glides by so often. And of course, the most recent entry.
Daddy-o, for so long it was our private conversation, but so many people have found this to be a place of love, appreciation, and healing. As we struggle to survive this pandemic and heal the wounds that we have created as a country, your gift will be a place where we can all come together to connect with our dads and share their stories. Love forever and a day, Barry.
And with that, the portal closes yet again, ready for the next grateful child to come along. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Heinsberg, Vermont. Sophomore Caleb Swanigan, number 50 for the Purdue Boilermakers, may be the most talented college basketball player in the country, but he is also the most unlikely.
It feels like I just had two lives, really. It feels like, for lack of better words, it feels like I died and then, got a reincarnation.
This is the new Caleb Swanigan, and this was the old. That's him in the yellow. Over 360 pounds in 8th grade. The only thing this kid could dunk was a cookie.
But what makes his success most implausible is that for the majority of his childhood, Caleb was homeless. His mom used to drag him from shelter to shelter here in Indianapolis and across the country until 2011, when she gave up her parental rights.
He had a little blue shirt, a tie, and some khaki pants, and had his little duffel bag under his arm. That's all the possessions he had.
Roosevelt Barnes adopted Caleb. At the time, Roosevelt was recently divorced and his other kids were grown and gone.
And it allowed me to have somebody in the house that I could love again, really.
Love and encourage.
Rebound, rebound!
Roosevelt says you have to encourage, which is why when that 360-pound 8th grader said he wanted to play basketball of all sports, Roosevelt didn't try to lower Caleb's expectations. He raised them.
When he couldn't jump over a piece of paper, I was telling him, you're great, you're the best power forward in the world.
So were you lying to him?
No, I wasn't. I was speaking faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen.
And Caleb believed.
I guess he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself at that point.
It helped that Roosevelt knew a little something about sports. He played pro football in Detroit and he now works as a sports agent. So he laid out a program for Caleb that included getting in shape and getting mostly A's in school. As a result, yesterday, Caleb Swanigan was named an academic All-American, one of the top basketball players in the country with a 3.3 GPA to boot. Is this kid one of a kind? Or is he just one of many kids on our streets and in our foster system who simply need someone to believe? Steve Hartman, on the road, in West Lafayette, Indiana.
I'm coming to you tonight from the greatest natural wonder in the world, the Grand Canyon. I chose this particular assignment, boondoggle, call it what you will, partly because I've been wanting to come here my whole life, but mostly because of somebody else who's been wanting to come here for all of his.
This is my dad, George Hartman. He never had a chance to do much sightseeing, raising my brothers and me on an auto worker's salary.
Well, I worked several years, 52 weeks out of the year.
Which is why I've always wanted to bring him to the Grand Canyon, so he could enjoy his 3 greatest passions in life. Being with family, being outdoors, and complaining about gas prices.
$259.9.
For a guy like my dad,
Never paid so much money for gas in all my life.
it just doesn't get any better than this.
Rip-off, for sure. Good gosh.
Our first look at the canyon was at sunset. We both had pretty much the same reaction.
Jiminy crickets.
Jiminy Crickets.
It's 10 miles across, a mile deep. No wonder 4 million people visit every year.
Good luck.
A fraction of those will hike all the way to the bottom. It's a trek my dad and I briefly considered until we read the warnings about heat stroke and dehydration.
Headache, nausea, and vomiting. It'd be nice if we could just do one that has just headache and nausea.
Fortunately, there's more to a good family vacation than becoming violently ill. You can take in a show.
Wow.
View wildlife you'll only see here
Can you see it?
Yeah.
or in your backyard.
That doesn't seem like that'd be you.
You can spend money in the gift shop or make it on the overlooks.
I see a dime and I see some pennies.
See a couple of quarters. There's a good $1.50 out there, Dad.
Well, it wouldn't be that hard to get it.
Dad, we're not going to do that. We had some good laughs. But the best part of the trip was rediscovering what I really love about my dad. How at 78, he's still so fascinated with everything.
That dog real?
And how comfortable he is striking up conversations with total strangers.
How much was gas in 1955?
Often about the history of gas prices.
You hear that?
What's that?
10 cents a gallon in Kansas at the gas war.
Really?
My dad,
That's interesting.
talking gasoline, standing on top of the world,
No kidding.
sun by his side. The perfect vacation.
Worth the trip?
Oh my God, yes.
Dad thinks we should just stay here. But not because of the stunning beauty or even the father-son moments, but because he insists at $2.59 a gallon, getting home is just too darn expensive.
I believe we have a widening generation gap in America, a technology gap that is separating people like me, who live for the latest gizmos and gadgets, from people like my father, who live in 1952. It really shouldn't bother me. But that same stinking lawnmower, the way he sits around his radio every night like FDR's about to come on. He has never gotten past the phonograph. Hasn't a clue how to answer a cell phone.
Hello.
Which is why I went shopping.
What's all that?
Bringing you into the 21st century.
I got my dad a DVD player, a TiVo, everything he never wanted.
This is an iPod.
iPod?
iPod.
My goal was to make his life better.
What does this thing do?
That plays music.
And certainly, when that first Beethoven song kicked in,
Whoa,
I swore I was making progress.
Ludwig. I feel like I'm in Vienna.
But later he said the iPod controls were just too complicated. Clearly, getting my father to let go of his ways would be way harder than I imagined.
Delaware, District of Columbia.
My second pitch involved a collection of maps he's been saving since AAA was just an A.
Flint? I don't know what I was doing at Flint.
Surely he'd want to be rid of those.
It's called a GPS.
It's not telling me what to do.
Well, you have to figure out how to get out of the parking lot yourself.
Oh,
Even when my dad does catch on to something, he almost instantly complains that it doesn't do more.
does it tell you which lane to get into?
No, it doesn't tell you which lane to get into.
Well, that can really confuse things.
Dad would not be throwing out his maps anytime soon. But I had one last idea. Nothing electronic, but still very 21st century. My father had never been in a Starbucks. Never had anything but straight coffee.
I want a tall, low-fat, macchiato. What a ripoff.
He never did tell me exactly how it tasted. But I recognized the face from my mother's cooking.
You don't have to finish it if you don't want to.
Well, I'm not going to throw it away for $3.35.
So why does it bother me that my dad lives in the past? Well, I thought about it, and the only answer I could come up with is that maybe I don't want to admit he's getting older. That's why for Christmas this year, I'm going to give him what he really wants. Time together. And of course, a map of Wisconsin.
A while back, Steve Hartman brought us a very personal story, but one that many folks could identify with. At the end of a tough week, and with Father's Day coming up on Sunday, it seemed like a good time to share it again. So here's Steve on the road at the intersection of yesterday and tomorrow.
Long before I went on the road, there was one road, Malcolm Road in Toledo, Ohio. There was one house, number 1053, and one man, my number one.
You recognize any of these?
I sure do.
My father, George Hartman, built this house himself back in 1955.
I sure do.
How long were you planning on living here?
The rest of my life. But when we built this house, we didn't consider stairs as a factor when you got old.
And so here we are. At that moment, elderly parents and their grown children seemed to dread equally the selling of the family home.
I prefer the stay, but you also have to realize that all good things come to an end.
After my mom died last year, it became increasingly difficult for him to manage on his own. So last month, my brother Joe and I went to Toledo to pack up his things.
You see what that is?
What is that?
My mother's hair when she died. She never got gray hair, as you can see.
I would have taken your word for it.
We spent a couple days trying to help Dad with his downsizing,
Yeah, I don't want to throw anything away like that.
Okay.
which at times felt more like same-sizing.
Shoehorn?
Yeah, I was looking for that.
But when pressed, the only things that truly mattered centered on either his faith
Rosary?
Yeah,
or his family.
I love you, Dad. Happy Valentine's Day.
You want to throw that away?
No.
A house that raised a family is so much more than wood and shingles. It's home to almost every memory of our younger lives. It's in the background of everything we were and helped make us who we are. It's where we learn to feel safe, sound, and sometimes even invincible. Yes, technically a house is just a place, but at times like this, it sure feels more like a person. My dad is now moving to a one-story apartment near my other brother, Mike, in Atlanta.
There you go, Dad.
And although I know he's not going to like it at first, hopefully, eventually, he'll be able to focus less on what he left behind and more on what he made possible. Steve Hartman, on Malcolm Road in Toledo, Ohio.
If life is a journey, Steve Hartman's family has passed a milestone on the road.
This is the story people ask me about more than any other. A story we first told last year about the house I grew up in and the man who made it.
You recognize any of these?
My father, George Hartman, built this house himself back in 1955.
I sure do.
How long were you planning on living here?
The rest of my life. But when we built this house, we didn't consider stairs as a factor when you got old.
My dad moved from here to a senior living facility near my other brother Mike in Atlanta, where I recently visited.
I get a lot of emails, people asking me how you're doing.
But
Yeah,
what do you call a lot of emails?
hundreds.
Huh?
Yeah.
How come you don't ever send me that kind of stuff?
As you can tell, he's still the same old dad. He got to keep his dog, which mattered most to him, and not a single stair in the place, which mattered most to us. And as for his fans, he told me he appreciates all of you who asked about him.
Tell them I'm still alive.
Okay.
What are they going to say when I drop over dead?
I don't know what they'll say, but I'm sure he'll want to read their emails. Steve Hartman, on the road in Atlanta.
We end the week with a tribute to a man you've seen in 8 Steve Hartman stories. His father, George Hartman, we are sad to report, passed away recently. Tonight, here's Steve on the road and from the heart.
His was the only story I was literally born to tell. The story of an auto worker dad who raised 3 children in total anonymity. Until one day, his youngest son, that would be me, put a TV control room in his garage and rigged the house with cameras, just to see what the retiree did all day. Which wasn't much.
And yet, to my surprise, that story resonated with viewers. Not because he was my dad, but because he was every dad of that generation.
He lived to be 92 and never once answered a cell phone successfully.
Hello.
He had Starbucks one time.
I want a tall, macchiato.
A caramel macchiato.
What a ripoff.
With an extra shot of cheapskate.
You don't have to finish it if you don't want to.
Well, I'm not going to throw it away for $3.35.
My dad never got over the Great Depression.
Good gosh.
Even when staring into splendor, he could still spot a way to save money.
I see a dime and I see some pennies.
See a couple of quarters. There's a good $1.50 out there, Dad.
Well, it wouldn't be that hard to get it.
Dad, we're not going to do that.
And yet, he never skimped on conversation.
That dog real?
He'd talk to anyone.
How much was gas in 1955?
Often about the history of gas prices.
You hear that?
What's that?
10 cents a gallon in Kansas at the gas war.
Really? That's interesting.
My dad was an accidental humorist.
Slow it down.
He rarely meant to be funny. But he was deliberate with his love.
Say a prayer.
By far, the most selfless man I knew.
So try to think of one thing you ever bought for yourself.
Well, I can't think of anything offhand.
I can't either.
His death makes me an orphan. My mom died a few years ago, and I can tell you this is a unique kind of emptiness. When there is no one left on earth to love you quite so unconditionally.
The last story I did with my dad was when we had to move him out of his house in Toledo. He had to decide what was worth saving. And in the end, it all came down to faith.
Rosary?
Yeah.
And family.
I love you, Dad. Happy Valentine's Day.
You want to throw that away?
No.
A great parent does a lot more than make you wash behind your ears. A great parent is a miracle worker who can mold a helpless blob like this one into a child who feels invincible. And although losing such a parent can feel like kryptonite, remembering them in all their glory can make your heart fly. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Toledo.
Oh my God. That is the CBS Evening News for this week. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, George. Have a great weekend.
With Father's Day coming up Sunday, we end tonight with a shining example of what fathers do and why we honor them. Steve Hartman met him on the road.
I know what I'm going to do.
Whether etched on tiny trophies or scrawled in crayon and marker, this weekend, a lot of kids will declare their dad the world's greatest.
You could put a donut in his hand. That's perfect. That's perfect.
But when 8-year-old Logan Rosati makes the claim, you can't help but believe her.
He wants me to have a wonderful life. I wouldn't trade him for $1 million.
We first met Logan's dad, Chris Rosati, a few months ago.
You had 2 donuts?
He was on a mission to give away 1,000 donuts all over his hometown of Durham, North Carolina.
We're glad to make some people smile.
A few years earlier, Chris had been diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. It's a terminal illness. But instead of wallowing, he made a conscious decision to spread as much kindness as he could while he could. Mostly as an example for Logan and her little sister, Delaney.
I can't teach them every lesson. I don't have enough time. But I can be a good person, and they can see that.
Chris says one of the benefits of ALS is that it puts your priorities in crystal clear focus.
Good, buddy.
He says dads who think their careers matter in the slightest, and as a VP of marketing, he was one of them, are clueless.
We're missing the greatest experience we'll ever have, ever. You always think that people who are dying want to get up early and watch the sunrise. I don't. I like to sleep. But if my kids get up early,
then you want to get up.
I want that experience, you know.
That's also why he's making every effort to make new memories every day.
Oh yeah, I got the summer full.
On this night, he arranged for Logan, who loves cooking, to work beside a top-notch chef.
There you go.
He's got even bigger surprises ahead that he says will wow his girls. But as far as Logan is concerned, that's really not necessary. He had her at hello.
Because that dad who has ALS was the dad I was born with.
And as for feeding her life lessons, he had her at the donuts.
What do you think you'll remember about him?
He tried to make friends with the world.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to do that. So I'm proud of him.
And you can bet right now, he's so proud of her. Steve Hartman on the road in Durham, North Carolina.
Sometimes life's greatest gifts can come from where we least expect them to. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
Time to go for a walk.
When John Ivanowski's kidney started failing and he needed a transplant, the most likely donor match was his daughter, Delaney. But John would have no part of her.
And I was like, well, why can't he just have my kidney? Or just take it now.
I said, no way.
Why so adamant that she not help?
She's the only thing I got.
15 years earlier, John's only other child, Dawson, died of cancer. So the thought of Delaney going through this surgery, no matter how small the risk, was more than he could bear.
After losing Dawson, I don't know what I would do.
Fortunately, a donor stepped forward.
Yep. An anonymous donor.
An anonymous living donor who also just so happened to be living in his basement. Unbeknownst to John, Delaney had spent the last year working with the transplant center here at Barnes Jewish Hospital in St. Louis, getting tested, going through protocols, and all the while completely deceiving her father. Until this very moment.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
John says he sat there for quite a while, not knowing what to feel.
I started crying. Hard to process everything, you know? It's
because anger and gratitude have never been intertwined like they were at that moment.
I'm like, should I kill you now or kill you later?
As time has passed, has gratitude overtaken the anger?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Most parents would give anything for their children. And when those tables turn, it's not really a parent's place to protest. Because the kids are just following the example you set.
I would do it over and over and over again if it meant to like save his life and have him here with me.
How do you say thank you?
Just take care of this gift.
The gift from her and the gift that is her. Steve Hartman on the road in St. Louis.
Finally tonight, if you were to write a letter to heaven, would you get a response? Steve Hartman may have found an answer on the road.
Earlier this month, out of the clear blue sky, a small Mylar balloon floated into the parking lot of the local Heroes restaurant in Auburn, California.
Yes.
Lisa Swissley is the owner.
I found the balloon right over here.
Right over here?
Yeah. And I saw some writing on it and started reading it a little bit. And oh my gosh, it was so deep and emotional.
The balloon was signed by a girl who lived 450 miles away in Whittier, California. Her name is Ashlyn Maracino. She's 16. And although she was happy to learn someone found her balloon, that restaurant was not her intended target.
Have you ever let a balloon go and watch it? It really does look like it's going to heaven. And that's like, I want him to know that I still love him and all that.
Ashlyn meant that balloon for her father. Scott Maracino died of an aneurysm in 2009, and Ashlyn has been sending him messages on his birthday ever since. On this balloon, she wrote, "Dear Dad, you have missed so much, and I miss you. There's this guy I met, Bryant. He's really nice, funny, and sweet. I've been playing softball for 11 years. I'm hoping you're helping me get those home runs."
I wanted to share my accomplishments, my life. I wanted to tell him what he missed out on.
And most importantly, she wanted to apologize for all the times she didn't write. Scott spent a few years in jail for robbery, and during those years, he sent Ashlyn hundreds of letters and handmade cards.
I never responded.
You never answered him?
Never a real letter, no.
Even after he got out and turned his life around, Ashlyn says she still ignored his phone calls sometimes, including the one she got right before his aneurysm.
I didn't answer the phone, and what if he wanted to say, I love you, and I would have liked to say that, but I didn't get to.
How many of us go to bed at night with the same potential for regret? How many of us might one day be just this desperate for one last contact? Fortunately for Ashlyn, she's pretty sure she got through this time. On the balloon, she asked her dad for a sign, and when someone somehow found her note in the local Heroes parking lot of all places, that was enough for her.
Just gave me faith and hope again and reassurance, and it's pretty amazing.
Take it from an angel. Steve Hartman, on the road in Whittier, California.
Steve Hartman's been on the road for years, and we finally got a postcard.
Generally speaking, postcards are for braggarts. Write what you will, but the core message is always the same. I'm on vacation, you're not. Nah, wish you were here.
If they really wished you were there, they wouldn't have left you behind. But in Valdosta, Georgia, we found a man who's bringing a certain sincerity to the petty postcard.
His campaign started in 1995. David Lassiter had just dropped off his oldest daughter at college. She was going to Notre Dame, and he was going to mush.
Because I cried from South Bend, Indiana to Elizabethtown, Kentucky with the whole family in the car when I left her. And I missed her.
So that night, he sent her a postcard.
And then, why quit?
Just as he has done virtually every day since, for all 4 of his kids. Any day they're not with him, he sends cards. Nearly 20,000 over 20 years. His daughter Sarah, who lives in Savannah, Georgia, has actually saved them all on strings and racks and crammed in cabinets.
There's nothing I love more than just a picture of a building.
And almost every card is unique.
They'll mail anything.
On front and back.
Uncle Ben's rice box.
What did he find to say?
There's a whole lot of talk about gardening and football.
Apologies to your dad, but that sounds boring.
I mean, come on.
I need a hard lace-up shoe.
Who really cares what happened at the podiatrist?
He taped my foot and said for me to wear my shoes all the time.
I don't even know if they read the cards anymore.
And he doesn't mind if they don't. David says this was never about conveying new information. This was always about repeating the same message over and over and over again.
When I'm gone, they'll know their daddy loved them.
I think they know that now.
You know, if life gets tough, and it's nice to know somebody loves you no matter what.
A good reminder, after this week especially, to tell your kids you love them as daily and creatively as you possibly can. Steve Hartman, on the road in Valdosta, Georgia.
Now, the play of the game and maybe the season. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
At a small university near Birmingham, Alabama, we found a big guy. 6'8", 310-pound senior offensive lineman George Grimwade is a dominating force on the Samford Bulldog football team. Over the last 4 years, the name Grimwade has become synonymous with muscle and might. But this story will surely change that.
George's a kind person, and he's proven that through life many, many times. That's what this is all about.
Michael Musto is George's stepdad. He married George's mom, Michelle, when George was in 5th grade, and the two have gotten along famously ever since.
He was just a sweet young man.
Until Michael Musto came along, George never had a regular male presence in his life.
I was trying to win.
So they bonded, over football especially.
You didn't get to see the game last night.
It's just how we've always communicated, through sports.
Is it more, or I love you?
It's definitely neither of those, I'll be honest with you. I think we just talk football. I don't think there's any grunting or...
But safe to say you've never said it as well as you said it that day.
That's the ultimate way to show him how much I love him, was to do this.
Earlier this month, George pulled off one of the most memorable moments in Samford football history, a sneak play that his stepdad especially never saw coming.
It's official. The play was certified by a judge, designed by seam ripper, needle and thread, and executed by number 76 himself.
I jogged over to my dad, and my dad goes, "What are you doing?"
He's got some papers in his hand. I don't know what he's doing.
Hey, you know how much I love you, right?
Yeah.
And how I always treasure the time I have with you.
Yeah.
And now you're my world. I got my last name changed. Look at my jersey.
I saw my name on that jersey. It was like, wow, this kid really loves me. I couldn't get the words out of my mouth.
I love you so much, Dad.
Took my voice away. He's just the best.
For a stepdad, it's hard to imagine a higher honor. For a football player, hard to imagine a greater show of strength. Because George didn't just change the letters on his jersey that day. He put his heart on his sleeve, and the name for that is Hero. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Birmingham, Alabama.
That reminds you of the importance of family.
Tonight, we have the story of a foster dad who has much to be thankful for, and all the foster kids who are thankful for him. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
When Lamont Thomas became an empty nester, it was the end of a parenting legend. As we first reported a couple years ago, this divorced father of two took on hero status when he took on a foster kid named Michael Perez.
He was a good young man, and I just hated to see him in the system.
Eventually, Lamont adopted Michael, who now works as a nurse.
I don't believe that I would be the person that I am today without the morals that he instilled in me, the family, the extended family that I have now.
How extended is that family?
I tell you, if I had enough fingers and toes to count.
Turns out Michael was just the beginning.
That's Marcus.
Over the next 15 years,
Jamie.
Lamont fostered more than 30 kids here in Buffalo, New York,
Herman,
and adopted 5 of them.
JJ.
And again, he did this all on his own and with all of his heart.
Every child that I have had, it was my goal to make a difference in their lives. Proud of them.
And you retired from fostering?
I did.
Go fishing?
Oh, yeah.
Trips?
Love all of that.
Of course, we wouldn't be here today if that was still the case.
Yes, sir.
It really was a shocker. I didn't expect for him to restart and to do it all over again. It's just amazing.
That's right. He got back in the game, and in a big way. Took on 5 siblings, all under the age of 6.
Major, are you eating books?
Lamont, a retired caterer, says he did have other plans for these years.
I didn't think it was this.
But those plans have now been shattered with mayhem.
When was the last time you went fishing?
It wasn't this summer.
Papa!
Yes.
Lamont decided to foster all 5 after he found out they were going to be permanently split up.
Yes.
And to guarantee they stay a family,
Okay.
he adopted them too.
I had to help them. They deserve to be raised together. Don't lick my mirror, please.
After this story first aired, we got a lot of surprising mail from women who saw this overwhelmed bachelor and thought, hottie. Some notes were subtle. Ask Mr. Thomas if he would like a pen pal. Others, more bold.
Women calling from all over the place. One of them told me, I think you're my husband.
Clearly, the kids see no room for romance, nor does Lamont.
I was about to change my number.
So he remains single, spent Thanksgiving with family, and is more grateful than ever to be not fishing. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Buffalo.
Maybe it's fate, but sometimes the right person comes into your life just when you need them the most. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
According to her mother, Lacey, 6-year-old Raylyn Nast of Fort Smith, Arkansas, has always been a daddy's girl.
She was very proud of her dad. She always wanted to introduce her dad to just about anybody.
Until a couple weeks ago, when her father, Davy, died of colon cancer. He was just 41, and Raylyn was just devastated.
It was a cry that was pure heartbreak.
Enter Emily Beineman, who happened to be jogging with her dog Blue the day of the visitation. She was running past the funeral home when all of a sudden she heard a tiny voice call out from the chapel steps.
She was like, "May I pet your puppy?" And I was like, "Yeah, like of course, like as long as your parents don't mind."
That's what you said to her?
Yeah.
Not knowing?
Not knowing, yeah.
Raylynn explained that her dad was lying inside, gave Blue a huge hug, and then gave Emily a stunning invitation.
I asked her if she wanted to come in and see my dad.
That's right. This still proud daughter invited that random jogger to meet her father.
Emily was hardly dressed for a funeral, and she knew just walking in the door would cause a scene. But she also knew this was the last time that little girl would be able to introduce her daddy to anyone. So she followed her gut and followed Raylynn down the aisle.
Everyone was kind of looking around like, where did she come from? And she came in right next to Ray, like they'd known each other for so long. There was that connection there.
How could two people bond so quickly?
She helped me feel better
Raylynn says it should be no mystery.
by her kindness.
Raylynn and Emily got together again this week and plan to stay friends forever.
Sweet.
Of course, no one will ever replace her dad, but Raylynn is clearly on the path to a better place.
Yes.
Thanks to the kindness of a stranger
Oh, those are good kisses.
and the healing power of a warm puppy. Steve Hartman, on the road in Fort Smith, Arkansas. For most of her life, 21-year-old Brittany Peck of Elyria, Ohio, felt caught in the middle, torn between two men she truly adored, her father, Todd Bachman, and her stepdad, Todd Sandrosky.
I felt like maybe I need to just, like,
Pick?
yeah, basically. Yeah,
What a position to be in.
I know. It was really, really tough. So I was in kindergarten.
This all began back when Brittany was 6. Her parents split up, then got wrapped up in a bitter custody battle.
It was riddled with lawyers and courtrooms.
Her dad, a short-haul truck driver, wanted custody and certainly had no interest in sharing his daughter with Brittany's new stepdad, who says the ill feelings were mutual.
We did not get along. We tolerated each other. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Over the years, things did improve slightly. They shared custody, and both men came to realize they were both pretty good fathers. But there was still a little tension in the air when last month the two families got together for Brittany's wedding. Her biological father was supposed to walk her down the aisle, when all of a sudden he bolted to the front.
I said, "I'll be back." And that's when I walked down the aisle, grabbed Todd, and said, "Come on."
He said, "You had just as much of a part of this in raising these kids as I did." He goes, "You're going to come and help me walk our daughter down the aisle."
Our daughter. He said, our daughter.
And that's when I lost it.
Hand in hand, they went back to get Brittany. Then arm in arm, they gave their daughter the wedding she always dreamed of.
It meant the world to me. It was the happiest moment of my life walking down the aisle with both of them.
In the presence of God.
Parents and step-parents are often at odds, but the wisest eventually realize that getting along isn't just best for the kids. It's best for them.
If that individual accepts your children and treats them as his own, how can you not have respect for somebody like that?
He invited me to be part of that day. And that's something that can never be taken away. It'll always be there.
A little wedding day advice from the fathers of the bride.
It's true that we learn a lot every Friday from CBS's Steve Hartman, and tonight he's on the road to expand our vocabulary.
All you want is a nice, peaceful breakfast. So you slice open an orange or grapefruit and get ready to attack it with a spoon. Only to have it attack you back, right in the eye. The phenomenon is well documented in pop culture.
Ow, you squirted me.
But did you know there's a word for what your citrus does to you?
You get sprayed in the eye and you go, oh, it avasculated.
It, or what?
Oh, it orbisculated.
Brother and sister Jonathan and Hillary Krieger of Boston say they picked up that word from their father.
As a child, you learn words because your parents use them, and then you start using them, and you don't kind of question, is it a real word?
Until you're thumbing through a dictionary one day and find there, between orb and orbit, nothing.
And I said, Dad, what's wrong with this dictionary? Orbisculate isn't in it. And he said, well, maybe orbisculate.
I might have made it up.
I might have made this word up.
The Kriegers laughed about that for years. Laughed until they cried. Last April, Jonathan and Hillary's dad, Neil, died of COVID. And in the days after his passing, that orbisculate story was one of the few things that still brought a smile, which gave the kids an idea.
It felt like a very nice way to honor someone at a time where there's not a lot of positive things going on.
What they did was launch a campaign to get orbisculate into the dictionary by getting folks to use it.
Right.
They came up with a list of 78 goals, like get the word in a crossword puzzle. Check. Temporarily tattooed on someone's body. Check. In a child's chalk drawing. Check. In a petri dish of phosphorescent bacteria. Surprisingly, check. In a news story.
Check.
Someone even put it on a sign at a grocery store. Warning, strong possibility of orbisculation. Words with Friends added it to their game. This woman wrote it into a song.
And that fruit orbisculated right into my eye.
Of course, getting orbisculate entrenched into our vernacular will be the challenge. But Jonathan and Hillary are determined to see this through.
And that would be something our dad would really love.
Definitely.
And you don't need a dictionary to see the meaning of that. Steve Hartman, on the road in Boston.
We end the week with a father and child reunion. It's only moments away. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
We are moments away from elation. 5-year-old Brian Kelly has been waiting nearly 6 months for his dad, Air Force Captain Dan Kelly, to get back from an overseas deployment. But before I show you that happy ending, we need to go back to the sad beginning.
He said, I have to go now. I'll see you soon. And Brian just started weeping.
Brian's mom, Barbara, says what upset her son most was that he wouldn't be able to do yard work anymore, his favorite father-son activity. As we first reported a few months ago, Dan's deployment left his junior airman aimlessly leaf-blowing in the wind, counting the days till Dad's return. Neighbor Dean Cravens used to watch them. He knew the boy missed his dad, but he didn't know how much until he got a knock at the door.
Nobody ever comes to our front door, so we're like, okay, who could that be? And you could see him through the window. It's Brian. And I just looked at him and I could tell he wanted to do yard work. I said, sure, meet me around the garage. We'll get some tools out and go.
And there was a door knock virtually every day thereafter.
Yes, Mr. Brian. He kind of took it upon himself to adopt me to do the yard work. There you go. Cut those off.
Which is why all summer, you could find this father figure and son puttering around their yards in Belleville, Illinois.
There it is.
Bagging the clippings and blowing their cares away. By the way, Dean does have a day job, works in IT, and he does have his own family, but he always made time for Brian.
Did you do that? Every single day.
Has Dean ever sent him back, say, not today?
Never.
Never?
Never.
We've been out there for hours at a time.
Don't you have other things you should be doing?
Probably, yeah.
So why keep doing this?
I'd just like to see the smile on his face and see him happy doing it.
We always talk about supporting the troops. For most of us, it's a commitment that begins and ends at our bumper sticker. But Dean Craven showed us what it really means to serve those who serve. In this case,
Brian,
making a long wait go by just a little bit faster. For son and father.
It makes you feel good that there's somebody else out there that's looking out for your child, sort of a male role model for him.
Today, Captain Kelly has his wingman back, but neighbor Dean Craven says he will be there if duty calls again, knowing that sometimes it really does take a village of landscapers. Steve Hartman, on the road in Belleville, Illinois.
We end the week with a special bond between dad and daughter. Steve Hartman got to the root of it on the road.
Phil Morgese of Daytona Beach, Florida, has always been good with his hands on guy stuff. But when it came to the finer points of styling his daughter's hair, Phil admits he was about a quart low.
Because every time I put a little hair clip in her hair, it would fall out almost immediately.
There with you, bro.
Yeah.
What were you sending her out looking like?
She used to wear a lot of hats.
Phil is obviously a single dad, and he hated that he couldn't put in a measly clip, let alone a 4-strand braid.
Right.
He wanted to learn it like really badly, and I told him it's so easy. You just take 4 strands.
This is his daughter, Emma.
Go under, over.
What Emma didn't realize about her dad, or most dads for that matter,
Wait, you lost me.
is that the Y chromosome makes us follically challenged.
Yeah. I was like, Daddy, I'm going to do a 3-strand braid. Just back off.
At that point, a lot of guys would have given up, but not Phil. He watched a ton of YouTube videos, and when he eventually mastered it, a light went off.
Something as simple as sending your daughter out and her being proud of her hair and you being proud of your work, it's a beautiful thing, you know? The purpose of the class is just to go through the basics.
To share that feeling, Phil now gives free styling lessons to other like-minded dads.
Grab the hair.
Daytona Beach police officer Kevin Pedri is a fairly typical client.
This is a lot harder than what I do normally.
Kevin says arresting crooks is a cakewalk compared to capturing a ponytail.
Okay, we'll start over.
But Phil presents it in a way even the most macho man can understand.
It's like wrapping a rubber band around an extension cable.
And by the end of this lesson in Girly Girl 101, their styling skills are second to none.
Wrapping the braid around the ponytail itself.
Although Phil says the real reward has nothing to do with hair.
That's excellent time to sit there and just talk about your day.
Yeah. My dad has a motto, it's not about the bun, it's about the bond. Or it's not about the braid, it's about the bonds. Or anything that has B and then bond.
B, yeah, it kind of works, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever the marketing, it's a success. Since launching the class in October, lots of other dads have started workshops in Pennsylvania, Texas, even the Netherlands. What more can I say?
The only question you haven't asked is, have I ever done hairstyles on a cat?
You're right, I left that one out. Have you ever done a hairstyle on a cat?
Well, no.
I should have quit when I was ahead. Steve Hartman, on the road in Daytona Beach, Florida.